constant innovation. And I was thinking about panelists, and like it almost sounds like I'm joking. This is like could not be a cooler group of people for this topic. So, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves properly, but I'll just give you the highlights reel before I hand it over. Albert Primo is an innovation principal at Kaufman Rossin. So they felt there was enough emphasis on this that they have created a partner who focuses on it full time. And he, in addition to the other things he'll articulate, he runs a development technology group within the firm. So they've hired programmers who are building internal software tools and are not accountants in any way, shape, or form, which I think shows kind of the foresight that large regional companies are having towards these issues. Dr. Melanie Geddes is the president and CEO of a non-for-profit organization called LifeNet for Families, which I think a lot of people have probably heard me talk about. I've been involved over the years and serve as chair of the board. LifeNet serves how many people a day? 200? Okay, you'll yell at me if I get it wrong. And Melanie's doctorate is in organizational leadership, and not only does she focus on fostering change in the clients that we're serving, who are oftentimes those sort of at the lower tier of the economic scale and of society and need stability, which I'm sure she'll articulate, but she's also worked through the change of the nonprofit agency, which started very much out of a grassroots movement and then has had to kind of step up into, how do you run things like a business, and how do you deal with the folks who have been loyal supporters who are maybe off-put by the changes that have been brought around. So we've gotten to see that together, but you've been driving. I've gotten the passenger seat. Our third panelist is Doyle Owens, who I've known for, I think we were saying 20 years. So Lauren is a published author. Her first book came out last year called The Other Side of Everything, which was published by Simon & Schuster, so we're very excited about that. Her work's been featured in the New York Times and like 1,000 other publications. But in addition, she does web content writing and digital marketing strategy work. So she's, I think, an interesting perspective because obviously the world of publishing is changing as things go digital. And then being in the digital space, which is an ever-changing world, it's an interesting overlap. Our fourth panelist is Dr. Katia Moritz. I like a panelist where it's like multiple doctors and various things. That's a good sign. So Dr. Moritz is a friend of the firm and a client of the firm for many years, and she runs a very successful psychotherapy practice with multiple clinicians in Weston that focuses mainly on children, would you say, or really all populations? All populations. Dr. Moritz will explain this far more eloquently than I have, but I thought it would be such an interesting perspective on the psychology aspect of this, but also as a very successful business owner dealing with changes in the workplace, changes with new generations that are coming into the workplace, standards of care that have evolved. And Dr. Moritz does a tremendous amount of thought leadership and speaking engagements across, I was going to say the nation, but she is Brazilian and does a significant amount of work in Brazil and other countries. So these are our panelists for today. I'd love to start, if you guys would like to add anything, maybe we'll start with Dr. Moritz to sort of flesh out your story in a more meaningful way.
Well, thank you. I'm able to run a business and help people. I couldn't find parking. I've been downstairs for a half hour at your phone and a few messages. So I don't know, there's a construction in the back of the building or something. But anyway, I'm glad I'm here. So I have a behavioral health clinic, and my job is to actually organize the new generation to provide the best quality behavioral health care we can. So my main area of expertise is severe anxiety disorders, so I actually chose the right expertise for our times, right? And so we actually focus on the treatment of severe anxiety disorders, OCD and related conditions, and the autism spectrum disorder, which unfortunately has exploded in terms of the population. Over the years, I have thought of behavioral health in a different way, maybe a little disruptive. And our clinic treats people in a very different way. The system is different. one patient has many clinicians working with them. It's kind of very interesting. And then we end up having to open a residential program for OCD and anxiety disorders because our patients were being hospitalized without a need, right? And so they had no halfway. Either they were home and they couldn't get better, or they had to be in a hospital that they couldn't get better either. So for me, the interesting part of business is a lot like therapy. We add it and re-add it and take the good and take out the bad, and really create a team around us. And so today I hope to add in terms of how it is to think of a business that is about heart and really helpful without not being a business, because it is a business as well, but how do you practice and how do you create something that is your dream, what you want to do in life and your passion. I've been doing this for 28 years. I'm leaving here and I'm super excited that there's a new patient that is really complex, and I can't wait to really try to figure it out. How do we then keep that business going? Because it's not only about like your excitement, and you have to do both. So I hope that I can add some value to the conversation today.
Nice, thank you. Lauren?
Sure. So, as Mary said, I wear a lot of different hats. As an author, I am in my house, in my pajamas, in my head a lot. And so, as a professional, I am out in the world and connecting with clients and working with everyone from B2C. Engineers in technology, substance abuse professionals, B2B, B2C, organic tea, or I just wrote something about birth doulas. And so it's always, for me, it's just about connecting the idea with the person who needs the idea. And that's even in my personal work where I'm so much more vulnerable, but for my clients, you kind of take the same fundamentals, like who needs this, why do they need it, and what is the best vehicle for the information. So it's a lot of different hats, different, I'm like a chameleon, but at the end of the day, so many of things in my life, the foundation and the fundamentals are the same.
I'm struck by, you mentioned sort of coming at things with heart, and Lauren was talking about the vulnerability, and I see that in everybody here, that it's like this authenticity of spirit and like a true concern for the underlying organization, even if that means you're delivering tough messages or having disputes with people. It sort of allows you, I think, in some ways to be braver. It's like how I look at you guys, but
I think Meredith did an excellent job of describing my work. I just would like to add that I really try to focus on my own potential and my own purpose and let that drive everything that I do professionally and personally. So I'm lucky enough to know that my purpose is to inspire hope, change, and growth. And I use that to kind of center everything that I do, even at Life Net for Families. So when I talk to you today, it'll be about how I use those kinds of things to make the work that I do come alive. And I'll just give a quick example. I'm coming up in the elevator today. I had a similar experience. I kind of drove around to go to that other parking garage that said no trespassing, and then had to back up, and I'm not the best driver. And cars are coming at the same time, but I get off track. So I get in the elevator, and I'm coming up, and this gentleman gets in the elevator, and he pushes 22. Most people get in the elevator, and they just want to ride. They don't want to talk to anybody. Sorry, I'm not that person. I am, hi, how are you? How's your day going? He's going, not so great. I wish I didn't have to be here. And I'm like, wow, Jesus. So he's really authentic, right? And so I say, well, what's the problem? And he's going to 22, I'm going to 24. So we have a few minutes. And he says, well, I'm being deposed. And I said, oh, okay. He said, so yeah, now you understand. And I said, no. Yeah, right? No, I don't understand. So what I want you to understand, sir, is that if there is not something that's pleasant, it's probably a lesson. So try and learn the lesson. And he stood there and he said, wow, thanks. And he got out the elevator. So in anything that you're doing is always another way to look at it, and that's the first part of changing the way you look at things.
So generally speaking, the bigger you are as a company and the longer you've been around, the harder it is to affect change. So that there's a direct corollary to us being an accounting firm. The accounting industry is going through significant change, and that's being driven by technology, by generational shifts, and so on and so forth. So, about 4 years ago, given my experiences in the firm and my inclinations, I was tasked with trying to affect positive change throughout the organization. And I think in that 4-year journey, what I've found is there's things that you can take and apply to your life that also apply to business. For instance, you were talking about mindset, and I think that in driving innovation, mindset, it all begins and ends with mindset. So hopefully, through my experiences, I can relate some of that and provide some insight and value to everyone.
I've noticed, so Albert Primo, we refer to him as Primo in the firm. It's just like what we're all used to calling him, so I'm going to continue to do that.
It's easier to remember.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things I think that Primo's always done extremely well is that when people within the firm call to ask questions or with ideas about innovation, and he's getting calls again from all walks of life. It could be accountant who's been in their practice area for literally 50 years, who, that's a tough person to innovate. Or it could be a new generation who's excited and new technology and is talking to Primo about how we're going to integrate that. But I've noticed that regardless of who calls you, your answer is always, that sounds really cool, let's talk about it, let's put it on the list. And there's never been a moment in time, I'm sure you've been biting your tongue, but you never said, oh yeah, I don't think that's gonna work, or here's how we dealt with it before. So I wonder, what other strategies do you use? Because I have to assume you're being that open, I mean, part of it's your personality, but are there other purposeful strategies you do to help people change their mindset?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, the reason why I don't shoot down the idea, from the start, is because you don't want to de-incentivize people to, come up with ideas. So you try to walk them through and say, hey, I love the fact that you shared this idea, but perhaps, what's the real business value? We're going to spend X amount of time doing this, and at the end of the day, what do you foresee the ROI on this idea being? Not just, for you or for your department, for the entire organization, right? We have limited resources, and we want to try to focus on what's going to have the biggest impact throughout the entire organization. So in regards to mindset and changing people's mindset, I think it's having those conversations and trying to explain to them the thought process behind why you make certain decisions. And I think mindset is one of the most difficult things to change. Most people have one of two mindsets. One is the growth mindset and a fixed mindset. So a fixed mindset is people believe that knowledge is fixed, that they can't become better or be better. They avoid challenges. They do not seek or embrace criticism. Whereas someone with a growth mindset says, hey, my potential is unlimited. They embrace challenges, they see failure as an opportunity, so on and so forth. So, you start talking about the different types of mindsets, and you ask people, so what mindset do you believe you have? And again, I think it's a process. It's not going to happen in that one conversation, but every single time you speak to someone, it is an opportunity to kind of shift their mindset, not change their mindset, but shift it. So, that's the way I look at it. The other thing is, I look at myself sometimes as a farmer, right? Because you plant seeds in people's heads, and as it relates to change, they might not be open to change, day one. So you introduce an idea and you gauge where they are, and say, all right, well, this person is really against it. I'm not going to touch this I'm not going to revisit this for another 6 months, a year. But if someone is mildly interested, that's someone that you might want to go back and water the seeds that you planted maybe a month later or 2 months later. And then that way you kind of formalize, or you figure out who you want to work with.
I've never thought of you as a farmer, but that's like a great analogy nonetheless. I want like the overalls now. You mentioned two words that like instantly made me think of Dr. Geddes. It was limited resources, which is very much the truth of the nonprofit world. And also you were describing just the sheer persistence to keep demonstrating your vision in the face of folks who may doubt it or not understand it. And I have seen you do that so, it makes my skin, perk up, like just so skillfully over so many years in the face of some people who just have not gotten it. And you've, I believe, in every interaction, you're like somehow sort of painting it again, like in some small way. Is that like a technique that you're purposely using, or what other strategies are you employing?
Yes and no. So part of it is you have to do everything with intention. And so when I have a vision, it's like, okay, we could be here. This is what it looks like, and you have to communicate that to everybody. And you have to communicate it to everyone in a way that they can get it. And that's difficult because everybody's different. And there are some people immediately when you say, no, hey, we could do this, they're like, oh, great, we could do that. And they're right with you because they are visionaries. And then there are some people who are like, black and white. I need the details, I need the data, I need to fully understand all the pieces. How is that going to work? What does it look like? And so now you have to ask yourself those questions so that you can respond effectively to that person or that group of people. And so it is recognizing that when you are doing this, any type of change, you have to look at who you're working with, all of the different kinds of people, if it's large groups that are within, or the individuals. And then you have to ask yourself, why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they do this? Why wouldn't they want to? And then you have to come up with ways to bring them aboard. One of the strategies that I use basically is getting the person who is leading the group on board. If it's in departments, it's a department head. Because research shows that the person who is going to have the most effect on change management is not necessarily the leader, it is the person who they directly report to. So, what Meredith says, she's the director, the board of directors, the chair. When I want something to get across, I've got to be able to communicate it to her. She's got to get it and understand it, because then she can get them to understand it. And then they're going to be more likely to go along with her because, yeah, Meredith, not necessarily Melanie. And so you have to lose the ego. It doesn't matter if it's you that people are willing to take it from. It's as long as it gets us there. I don't care who you hear it from. So I usually look for the person who hates the idea the most and try to build from there, because that's the person you got to get. All of the people who love you and your ideas all the time, oh, this is great. Anything you say, let's do it. They're not going to help you get there, because they're going to be just like you. You need people who challenge and shoot your idea out of the sky, and you have to be open to that. And it's really, really tough because you kind of feel like it's your idea and it's great, right? And every survey that I've taken has told me that you really like your ideas. So it's just like, really? I don't know. Yeah, I do. So it's your idea, you think it's great, and so you have to then push it to somebody who will shoot holes in it and then come back. So having a good network around you of people who you can say, hey, listen, this is what I'm trying to do. Shoot it out of the sky for me. That's the best way.
You mentioned ego, I was going to say, which made me think of Lauren. That's a bad joke. But I'm thinking of the world of writing, like long-form fiction. It seems, from my perspective, that is you toiling by yourself, hoping that eventually at the end of that progress, somebody's going to embrace this idea. How do you, A, keep the vision sort of in your vacuum as you go, and then B, as you start to speak with all these publishers or agents, how do you maneuver when somebody doesn't get it? And now it's like your personal thing. What does that look like?
I think you almost have to interrogate yourself and interrogate the idea to the point to where it gets stronger and stronger and stronger because you've tested it. You've said, oh, I don't know about this. Well, let me make it better. Let me make it better, 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 better. So then it's so solid that if somebody wants to come and say, oh, this is terrible, I hate it, don't do it, you just go, oh, okay, and you move on to the next person because somebody's gonna like it because you know that it's solid.
Wow. Because your point is you've already gotten, by the time you get to the end, it's like you've already given yourself the worst criticism in a way, right? I mean,
That's very much my.
that's your strategy.
Yeah.
Dr. Moritz, your business, I'm always struck with the constant growth of your business and the fact that in our one-on-one conversations, it's so clear that the level of care that's provided in your world is a huge differentiator. And I didn't understand how significant that was. I mean, I know I'm not necessarily a patient, but I've been to some doctors who were just okay and some who were fantastic, but how do you, in the face of growth, make sure that you're innovating but still maintaining that very important threshold?
Yeah, I think it's very similar to what the other panelists are talking about, which is how do you set up your openness to criticism, right? How do you keep yourself humble? So, I have an intern that just started who probably seen their first few patients in the past few weeks, right? And here we are being, we've sat with patients for decades and sitting there and everything, but why do I know more than this person? I really want to listen to what they have to say. Nothing like fresh ideas, new concepts, current stuff, right? And you have to be like the ego part has to there should be no ego whatever whatsoever because we're all here to learn from one another. We're like human people and we're here to learn. And so I think what allows us to keep things going is because we actually don't look at criticism as criticism. We look at an opportunity, right? So if you want to tell me what I've done wrong, wait, that's great, please do. So for me, our employees that stand up and say, hey, I'm not sure why you're doing this, right? And it's annoying. It's like, well, because I know this better than you right now. But then you're like, wait, but do I? And why did I do it? And how? And so one thing that we've learned is that we bring in all the issues to the table, even our own situations with patients and with care. And the idea is that, priming people, I think what you were saying before is, when someone comes with an idea to you and you kind of don't validate their effort to come, it's hard to go to you to someone with an idea. More if you're someone in a position of power, right? And so managing that position of power is very, very, very important because you want people to feel that although you are in a position of power, which we can't change, and it's not bad, the idea is that I have access to telling you my ideas and making contributions, right? So in order to keep quality, we realize that we have to keep an eye on ourselves. And so, I am a mixed business person, but I'm actually a clinician. I'm going to leave here, and I have a full day of patients to see, and I'm going to sit with every one of them and be there and listen to them and go above and beyond. So I think that when we are creating values for our companies, right, we have to think about what describes as best. To me, what describes as best is above and beyond, right? So it doesn't matter what it is. If I have to fly with a patient to New York because they can't fly, I have to figure that out. If I have to show up at your house because you couldn't get dressed, guess what? I have to figure that out. That's my job to figure it out, right? So I think that the perception that healthcare is just the bottom line is because that the structure of healthcare right now provides the provider with bottom line compensation, right? So to balance that out, you have to figure out a way to do it. For us, we did it in a bit of a different way, which is we don't take insurance, right? Which is crazy. But then if there's someone that really can't afford, guess what? I can scholarship you. I'm not dealing with the BS of the insurance. So we just had our first, our residential program is 2 years old. It took me 25 years to plan, just don't listen to me then. It took me a long time to execute it. But we always wanted to make a program that people that we never would be committed to finances, right? So if you take money from someone else or if you take a big loan or something like that, you feel the pressure that you have to revenue to cover that. But my pressure means I am making decisions about any of the patients coming in. Are you a good fit? You're not a good fit. if I need your money, I'm going to be a little more lenient. It's human nature to say, oh, I think I could help you, you know? I'm gonna do that. So it took me a long time to say, hey, I don't care if it's empty. We can still pay the bills and we're just gonna go along with it, right? And so I think that commitment allowed us to then this year, you know, and we're a very tiny program. I mean, we are allowed to take 8 people. I don't take more than 5 because it's so complex. Then we took our first completely free patient. So this is someone who is in Puerto Rico, lost everything to the hurricane, has severe debilitating OCD, and can't work because of her OCD, right? So then we're like, okay, so what do we do? The only thing we had her do is to find a way to get to the US. She had housing, she had food, she had 100% the same exact therapy as the kid who was sleeping next to her room, whose dad owns an $18 billion business, like runs an $18 billion business. She had the same treatment, right? So for me, we need to find pathways that may not be so like clear to us. And when people say, oh, you run an elitist program, they have no idea that we scholarship 200 families. They have no idea. And I say, oh, I understand how you feel about it. Well, that's our business, right? So, and I think that the idea of keeping the care is about what we all do in our business, is where's our priority? Is your priority only the revenue? Is going to, so if your goal is like revenue, it's going to be hard to keep that. But if your priority is the mental health of your employees, your own mental health, you know, I don't care if you're going to make another $1 million, that's going to make you happy. Even if you make another $50,000 and you're a mess, right? So that balance for me is really important, for me and the staff. So we think about that a lot.
I see that same link, this, you know, not chasing dollars, but it being a passion or something that's speaking to your personal values. But I still, every time I hear about your day and I meet with you, I feel tired. Because it is absolutely, I mean, nonstop. How do you maintain that level of just like motivation, and what do you do? Like, do you ever stop or?
I feel like they should do a reality show and everybody's gonna try to like watch this lady how she's gonna crash like this. Right? I don't know. Like I you know, like when you do what you love, it doesn't feel a lot like a job, and so it is a job. And so what I don't love about my job is really the BS that goes on behind the scenes, right? All the nuts and bolts of it. And if I had people to run that part, I would be the happiest person alive. But like, it's hard to get that done, right? So you always, so I do a lot of everything. And my day is a little bit insane in that sense, just because I shouldn't be treating patients still at the stage of my business, but I'm not gonna not do that. And I can't give up everything else because I don't have the mechanisms yet to do that. And I do have 3 children, by the way, and a husband and a dog who had to get fed before I walked in here because my son is home from college and he was sleeping and I knew he wasn't going to wake up. So I think that the idea is, I think for me it's not thinking too much about how tired we are or what we've been doing and how we're doing. The energy comes from this, right? So being with you guys today is going to give me a great amount of energy, and having the other panelists and listening to them gives me a lot of energy. And I think the idea is to actually let things go organically, let your growth happen. You know, I think a lot of times we're so anxious and nervous about what will happen. We are as nervous about failure as we are as success, right? So it is like, I love this concept of self-handicapping. It's like we don't really try our best, because what if it doesn't work out? We're gonna feel like crap, right? And then we kind of like stop ourselves from really trying. And for me, I think I go on this mantra of like, I'm really not here for the results. I don't even know what the results are. So if you ask me how much money should my company revenue now, I have no idea. I actually don't even look at my paycheck, which is really wrong, and Meredith know that, which I get in trouble for.
We got it.
Yeah. Because I say, well, you know, it shouldn't really guide my decisions. If things are good, they're good. I mean, as long as I say to them, tell me we're paying our bills and we're covering overhead, let's keep going, you know? So I think the idea is a personal goal more than a financial goal for things. And of course, it's important. You need to make your money. College is really expensive. All of these are expensive. But I think to keep that energy about like what you do for people, and every time I see someone, I was at this conference in Austin this weekend speaking, and this kid comes to me and he said, "Do you remember me?" I get that all the time. And he's this handsome 25, 28-year-old. And I look at him and I look in his eyes and I can see I know this kid, right? And he's like, "You treated me when I was 6 years old and I couldn't leave my house. I had such bad OCD, and I just want to tell you that I'm graduating law school and I'm going to be an advocate and everything." And I say like, well, so that's why you wake up in the morning, right? Because you're going to see that in your life. So whatever business we are in, there is that story, that narrative, right? Which is you're affecting someone's life. If it is your colleague's life, it's your employee's life. So for me, I am lucky because my job is to help people. And if you told me do it for free, I'll do it for free. I mean, I love that. Like you do it on your nonprofit. I think that's an amazing way to do it, and I think the energy comes from that.
Lauren, I'm thinking of the work that you do on the professional side. It strikes me as you're almost like having to create narratives for companies where you're trying to foster change. How does that work? How do you get fatigued from trying to make them get it? Are there certain ways in which you help structure it so that they have buy-in?
Yeah, so it's similar to my own work, where I just say, what is the best package to put this in so that I can help the client understand what I'm looking at. And a lot of times it's taking the same piece of information and providing it in 3 different ways, so that if there's somebody who can look at a list and go, oh, I get it, or if there's somebody who needs an example and then they get it, so thinking about, I've been doing some really boring work lately, working in a spreadsheet, and I finally have that done, and now I'm saying, okay, but now I'm going to categorize it so that they can look at it and see exactly, how many of whatever they have, and then I'm going to write a report so that that they can see the really high level. Here is these 70 pieces. Here is my bottom line advice for these 70 pieces. So just saying, I get that you might not think the way that I think. So let me digest it for you in like a couple of different ways, and then present it so that even if at the end of the day you go, yeah, I don't feel like doing that, at least, because that happens, these things are expensive, these things take time. Companies have a lot of content, a lot of really old websites, and when something is built without a lot of thought into what's it going to be in 5 years, what's it going to look like, if something is built without a strong foundation and without good architecture, it's just a mess. And if you're just going to let your mess flower, if you decide to do that at the end of the day, all I can do is present to you, okay, here's your weedy garden, here's how we're going to fix it. And if at the end of the day somebody goes, oh, that's a really great idea, but yeah, that's like time and intense and expensive, and yeah, it is, but at least I gave you the information and I gave it to you in a way that you got it, and maybe next year you'll take another look at it and say, oh, she was right, let me go back, because that happens too.
That's a great example. Melanie, I'm thinking about the type of change that you're managing, and it seems like it's in a wider scale that affects our community and involves, some of the legal folks in our world, and government officials and business officials. So I see you as having a really varied group of stakeholders. How do you keep the momentum? I mean, I hear that it's coming from this internal drive and passion, but is there a point at which you think it reaches critical mass where enough of these key stakeholders start to understand how you're trying to innovate something, and does it then then get easier, or does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. I don't know that it ever gets easier because people have shifting priorities. And so we tend to focus on what's in front of us. So it's like, oh, the veterans are coming home. You know, the troops are coming home. Let's focus on veterans issues. Whatever is in front of us, whatever we hear on television. Oh, the kids, the immigrants, the this, that. So people shift and they're like, oh, that's shiny. And we're over here. Now we're doing this thing. We're putting all of our efforts here. And so people tend to lose focus. And so when you are managing change, you have to remain focused because everybody else around you is going to see something else that they could be a part of, or that looks better or more interesting or is sexy. And the change that I'm managing at LifeNet isn't pretty. It's homeless people, people show up with preconceived notions. You've had a personal experience. You drive by this same guy every day and he's holding this damn sign. You've given him money in the beginning because he got you, and now you won't give any more because you know what he's doing. So you have that thing to overcome. So it clouds the ability to see the people who aren't homeless who are coming, or the people who are homeless and just struggling, or living in their car with their kids. And so you have to, my job is to stay focused on that, on the bigger picture, and then to find ways to connect with people. It's always about people. I can connect with each of you on some level because everybody's had an experience. You may have a family member who suffers mental illness. Somebody you know had a drug addiction. Somebody lost a job. Somebody's kids aren't doing exactly what they'd want them to do. And so on and so forth. You can get to see the story that all of these people started from being a baby and somebody looking at them and having these aspirations of, oh, this is exactly what this person might do, and then something shifted. And so the people who come to LifeNet, for example, usually don't have another place that they could go because, I mean, let's face it, who would come to LifeNet to take a shower, right? So by the time you get there, you don't have another person that is going to help you. So now it is our job to take that responsibility seriously and then to be able to convey that to people. So I think it's important to, even when people shift, to go back to them again and remind them and to stay in front of them and not to be discouraged by their shift, to recognize that whatever you're passionate about is not necessarily their passion. It doesn't mean that they won't help you or they won't connect, but you have to keep going and keep doing. And so it is passion, mixed with a little bit of stupidity, because sometimes days I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. And then it's just this sense of, yeah, I'm not gonna fail because I'm supposed to be doing this. And so I think we have to approach everything that way. Like I cannot fail because, hey, this is what I'm here to do. Somebody hired me, somebody said, this is what you're supposed to do, and it's aligned with my overall purpose. So hey, why not? I can do it. I think that there is some sort of, I hate the word balance, because I always say that there's no such thing. You are choosing. Balance just makes you feel better. So sometimes you're choosing your job over your kids, sorry, but we're making a choice. But there has to be some decision that you make that guides, you know, what you're going to do and what you're going to accomplish, so that you don't lose something trying to save something. And like by that, my phone on Saturdays will say, LifeNet 36 minutes, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to LifeNet now. I'm going to change that. So that my phone isn't saying LifeNet 36 minutes. At least it should be saying Publix 5 miles now, right? But you get so wrapped up in whatever you're doing sometimes that you can convince other people to be a part of it. And I think that that's what Meredith is talking about. When you are so in it and other people see your passion, they kind of want to be connected to it. And yeah, so that's what I would encourage anybody who is trying to change anything, to stay focused on it, to stay in front of people, to be deliberate and intentional, and to make sure that you're defining it clearly. Like, to me, that's the biggest part, because if people understand it, then they'll be open to being a part of it.
Thank you. Primo, in the work that you do in Kaufman Rossin, I see that there are other operational divisions. So Primo is doing this technology development team, the innovation team, but then we have, let's say, a team that focuses on learning, and they are trying to innovate in their own accord. Or you may have specific service lines that are trying to innovate, whether it's with regards to technology or fostering a multi-generational workplace, or even just the physical layout of our offices changing to a more open environment. But it seems like it can create, even though everybody has the same intentions, a lot of kind of conflicting threads, and that can ultimately get folks really sidetracked. So I hear you talk about sort of this clarity of vision. How do you do that when it's a bigger organization and you are not, at the very top?
Yeah, great question. So, as a point of reference, so we are approximately 400 employees, and we've been in business for 55 years. So that's a lot of mindsets that are very set, right? It's hard. I'm not gonna lie. And vision is something that you're constantly you could always do a better job communicating vision. And that I think starts with our CEO down to all the service line leaders and so on and so forth. I think for me, what I'd like to do is formalize that maybe in the form of an innovation strategy. And then once you have that strategy in place, you start maybe you have a presentation where you broadcast that to the entire organization. Look, in 2016, I formalized one, and I had one presentation, and it basically, and it was to the key stakeholders in the company, but it kind of stopped there. So that was 100% my bad. What I should have done is I should have been a lot more pervasive in going to different office locations, having the presentation, having Q&A sessions, and then just constantly having those, personal interactions with people to try to communicate what that vision is. And even still, it's going to be really, really hard for them to fully buy into it. But even if you start getting varying levels of buy-in, you can start seeing the needle moving in the right direction. But it's tough.
And how do you realign when you think somebody's not getting it? You don't want to stifle their innovation, but someone thinks they're doing the right thing and is now sort of going off to the side.
Right. So look, and you talked about you mentioned a couple different service lines. You're never going to have everyone on the same page. So what I've come to, I know you mentioned that you like going after the person who's most critical. And I think the great thing about innovation and change management is there's a million different ways that you can do different things, and they could all be effective at some level. Me personally, I like going after the path of least resistance, because I used to go after the most critical people, and it was just bandwidth that was wasted. So now I just go after the path of least resistance, and I like to work with people who want to work with me, whose visions are somewhat aligned, because there's so much going on that, hey, I could have 3 full-time jobs focusing on those people who want to work with me, and still have plenty of opportunity left there to affect change. So that's where I'm at today, and that's after doing this for a few years. And I figured out, let's work with people who wanna.
Right. And is the thought process that those strength in numbers then sort of are catching to
Yes,
other
yes,
pockets?
correct. And then it
Like
becomes
a virus.
pretty much, right? But because once everybody's on board, or the majority of people are on board, the other people who are highly critical, they really have no choice but to buy in.
Yes.
We haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen that mass
Right.
shift, but that's kind of the thought process behind it.
Interesting. Can I ask you, Melanie, is there an example of something you tried in the world of innovation and fostering change that in retrospect you would not do again, or that was a great example of oh yeah, that didn't work like I thought it was?
Yeah, when I first came into LifeNet, it was run like a mom and pop kind of shop, very loose. The example I give people is you have to weigh the incoming donations, and you need to know what it is. And we had people on the staff who were going like this, literally. That's about 50. And it was just like, what? What are we doing? And so just in observation, trying to pay attention and look at everything before I come in and make any changes, I was just like, yeah, this is beyond observation. Some of this is just transformational. No, we need to stop that today, right? So one of the things that I did early on was I inherited this team, and one of the people who I inherited on the team was someone who had applied for the position and didn't get it, of course, because I'm here. So I recognized that that person was going to have some hard feelings. They had kind of done interim, done everything, and then, you know, the decision was to go in a different direction. So for me, this person was difficult, very challenging. You know, you come in and you don't, just because you come in as a CEO doesn't mean you come in with anything. It's like, well, where's everything? Who did what last week? And it's like, oh, well, I don't know, you should be you're the CEO. That was kind of the attitude. And so I went to that person and had a conversation about how I understand how that feels. I had worked in a company where I applied for a position and I didn't get it. I literally created the position and wrote the job description and pitched it, and then they interviewed and hired someone else. I was like, what? So I understood that, and so I told him, you know, I really understand how that feels. I told him the story of what happened to me, and then told him that I want to work with him, and I want him to move along. So I'm going to work with you, and I'm going to give you time to come along. I'm not going to push you because I understand that you have to get through some of this stuff. And, you know, I thought we had a come to Jesus moment. I thought we had connected and it was all there. And I was just giving him time. And so, yes, I was proceeding with the rest of the people, letting him, you know, come along as he could. But in the background, he wasn't really coming along. He was, you know, manipulating things, talking to people on the side, forming a coup, you know, doing all this stuff. We should go to the board, we should do, it's like, what? So another person came to me and said, hey, you know, I feel awkward because this staff person is saying that we should do this, and I think that you're doing a great job. And, you know, this person was complaining because you were late on your second day, and I'm like, what? I had 4 biopsies on my second day. Literally. I came to work. So yeah, close your mouth. I did. So I'm like, what? But you know, so all of these things happen, and you realize that okay, this person isn't going to help us to get there. And so then the conversation had to change to you're not the right person. But initially, I felt like this individual would be someone who, if we could shift him and get him on board. Then what a story that would be. So I do believe in, I hear what you're saying, and I've had that experience for years too, but I believe in giving people an opportunity first to come on board, because you have to understand the resistance. If it continues, then you have to, so that was a quick decision for me. But initially, sometimes people are resistant because they're afraid. They're so set in what they've always been doing. You're coming in and you're shaking the boat. They may fear for their job. Maybe it's a distance in travel. It could be anything. And so you really want to try to go to that person and figure out what they're thinking. Sometimes they have some information that when they tell you, you go, oh yeah, I hadn't considered that. So I think it's important to get feedback from those people who might be not feeling like they're on board with you. Maybe it's personal. Maybe they just don't like you, right? Sometimes people don't like you. No matter how upbeat you think you are, I just don't really like you. I don't like the way you look. You know, but seriously, I don't like the way you talk. Your voice is annoying. There are different things. We all experience it. There's some people who they just get under your skin for whatever reason. You're like, oh gosh. And so you want to figure out, if it's just that, like if we get beyond that, can we all focus on the common purpose? You know, you don't really have to like me right there, but are you here for the same reason that I'm here? And if we can agree on that, then I might be able to help them move the needle. And so, and when I look back in retrospect, dealing with this one individual in the way that I did probably wasn't the best approach. It didn't really help with the overall organization, and I missed it. But, and so that wouldn't be something that I would do again. If somebody who's applied for the position and then they're disgruntled, I'd probably start to look at ways that maybe they could do something differently, especially when I see the handwriting. I saw it.
So what happened with him or her? Okay.
So we're getting close to wrapping up. I would like to take the opportunity to open this up for a question. I feel so remiss. I feel like we could sit here and talk all morning. Like the level of experience that each of you have in your endeavors to me is like a world of wisdom. But coupled with this integrity and passion that really can make some of these issues that I feel like I struggle with on a day-to-day process seem so laser focused, which I really admire. That being said, if anybody has a question they'd like to throw out, maybe we could use our last few minutes to do so.
And also, we have the room a little bit after. We're just trying to be mindful of those that have to go back to their office or have meetings. So
Okay.
if you can hang out a little bit.
Yeah, we can chat. Okay. Any questions from the crowd? I don't mean to put anybody on the spot. I'm happy to keep. Yeah.
So I work in change management with design and construction, and we work with typically the C-suite on looking at how they're going to change their office, whether it's a renovation or a move, and then typically they want to make some cultural changes or atmospheric changes and put something in writing to the groups to say, this is how we're going to work in this space. And so it's my job to coach them to get buy-in from the rest of the team. And typically what happens in most companies, especially the larger one, is the people at the top make the mandates and then they just want everybody to buy into that mandate instead of hearing what the people at the bottom or in the middle have to say. So my question is to the group, to whomever wants to take it, is just if you've had this situation before and how you get that buy-in, and not everybody's going to agree, not everybody's going to think the same thing, especially when we're in some companies moving to more open office areas that may or may not be the best for the team. What are strategies that you use to talk to other people in the company that are not just at the top to get buy-in?
So when working with clients, one of the first things we do is say, what are your pain points? Because somebody could come to you and say, oh, I need a new website, or I need a social media strategy or something like that. And you just kind of go back and say, okay, so tell me what your pain points are. Tell me how I can help you address those. And so you might even just create a process that says, here's a questionnaire I have for the individuals who work in the office, because I want to know how they experience the space and how we can help improve their day-to-day, because they're the people, like we all have our design ideas, we all know what we would like to do, but these are the people who are making you the money so that you can do the thing that you do. So let's help them, let's ask them, let's interrogate their experience and say, how is this for you? And then once we have that, we can kind of figure out how to create something out of that.
I would say that it's a mix of pressure and understanding, right? I think people want to feel important, and you may not be able to give them what they need and they want, but they want to feel heard, and they want you to know, they want to know that you know, right? So I think the idea of actually listening to what they're asking is important. It's a mix of the vision of what you're trying to do, empowering in them that there's a greater good, right? We're doing this because our company will grow, and how would that affect you? In reality, I don't care how passionate you are, and when you're on the bottom, on the middle of the company, you really are trying to swim and survive, right? But if I tell you that I can make the current a little less rough for you, even though it's going to feel funny at first, you may be able to actually support what I'm trying to do. So growth is really interesting because people like sameness, right? You don't have to be on the spectrum to want things to be done the same way. If you watch your routines, pretty much repeat it over and over. It's another day. You wake up, you do the same things, and the more routine you are, the faster you're going to do. So you become really good at that, right? So you are disrupting a situation, and validating that is really important. To say, hey guys, I really realize this is going to be disruptive. This is going to be can we do to mitigate that difficulty, right? So it's almost like when you get something that is, Meredith, you have to pay taxes, right? She says that every year. You have to, right? You're gonna have to pay all this money in taxes. You're gonna have to say, let's mitigate that in my mind, what that looks like. And so I think that validation of your role in that bigger picture really is helpful. And actually, they ask, guys, I may need you to help me with this, and I know it's gonna be hard. Because by the time you validate how you feel, I'm feeling, you're like, all right, you're putting it ahead of me, that this may be hard. So I know you know, so I'm like, yeah, it's hard, but now I'm gonna tell you my other side, but this may be better for us because of blah, blah, blah. So once you tell me the negative first, I always say, like, if I'm gonna sell you this room, I'm gonna say, look, has this like funny thing on the side there that breaks the room a little bit, right? And then when you say, oh, but the view, and then you're gonna tell me the view is beautiful, right? If I tell you first what's wrong with it, you may actually jump to the other side and tell me what's right about it, right? So a lot of times when we're trying to sell a project, we start like giving our vision and being all passionate, this is gonna be amazing and blah, 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 and then people are like, oh, well, but what's gonna go wrong? Like, what is gonna be like, you know, that we're gonna go in a different direction? So maybe flip it. I'll say, guys, this may really be difficult, and we may have to do this way, right? And say, and then tell me something I don't know about me, kind of a feeling, right? Tell me something like you're gonna almost like saying it's like the bully, you know, like, oh, you're stupid. I'm like, oh yeah, I know, I am stupid. And you're like, oh, okay, like you don't care, you know what I'm saying? Like, so go up with like, yeah, this is gonna be hard, and this is gonna be a change for you guys. I'm actually worried about you. Are you gonna be okay with this change? He's like, wait a second. What do you think? I'm not flexible? I'm gonna be okay with this. Right? So I think it's actually, it's not manipulative, but actually is a frame that you use that will actually allow people to buy in or not buy in. That's how I feel about it.
Thank you. So I think we're nearing the end. I know Lori wanted to make some closing comments.
That was incredible. Thank you very much. And everybody